Magic Barclay is the lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia. Magic's life changed when she faced multiple life threatening conditions, including stage 4 cancer. She then decided to find the root cause of her health issues, and that set her on a path of life changing learning. Magic, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Magic, take us back, give us sort of the timeline of when you started to have symptoms and what were those symptoms and how long were they going on?
Sure. Well, I'd had symptoms for a while, so I just felt like something wasn't right. My weight was skyrocketing. I was just really unhappy in myself, and I kept getting kind of sent away by the doctors. Nothing's wrong with you. The tests are all normal, within range, like this is all in your head kind of thing. And I started believing that I was crazy. Anyway, I went on a mission to lose weight, and I did. I lost half my body weight. But then I started getting unwell again. And I thought, well, so it wasn't the weight that was the problem. What is going on? So my weight was actually coming back really, really quickly after being gone for quite some time. And I had chronic fatigue syndrome, which I'd never had before. So, I could barely be out of bed for more than 2 hours a day. In that 2 hours, I was going to the gym, trying to make my family's meals and do everything. And so I was working out really hard, and I had myself on really restrictive diets like juice fasting, things like that. So it wasn't too many calories that was the issue. But what developed was this problem with not being able to swallow. So I just felt like someone was, trying to strangle me all the time.
Oh,
And I was just sick with everything. The kids would come home from school with a cold or whatever, and they'd have the sniffles, and I would be like on the floor surrounded by snotty tissues. Sounds disgusting, but things would hit me worse than anything.
yeah.
And so my immune system was crashing. So what was going on? I had no idea. And the swallowing thing was the hard bit because all I could say to the doctors was, it feels like someone is strangling me. And they were like, well, that's weird. So
Did they
I
not
finally
suggest an endoscopy? Did someone not?
No,
They
they did
weren't.
all the thyroid tests because I said I think it's my thyroid, and I was Doctor Googling this whole thing. So they were doing that, but the tests were coming up normal. So they were like, "There's nothing wrong with you; it's all in your head." So I kept hearing this,
They would
and I
never say
find,
that to a man, right?
well, actually, they
Never.
do. No, they say it to
They do?
everyone, but they say
Oh,
it more to women.
yeah.
So I finally found a GP who listened to me, and I said, "Listen, I'm not crazy. Well, not to this extent. Like we've all got a bit of crazy in us, right? But I can't swallow and my weight's coming back." And he said, cut back on what you're eating, exercise more. I said, I exercise and I'm barely eating. I should be dropping weight, not gaining it. I feel like someone's got lead weights tied to my legs and I've got to drag myself around and I can't swallow. So he actually took me seriously and he organized a whole lot of tests, starting with, some adrenal tests, some cortisol testing. And then he asked me a lot of questions, which no other doctor had ever done before. They just wanted me out of their room like quickly. And he goes, I think you might have a thyroid cancer, but we need to investigate this. But that's not where it stopped. So my new GP, was now investigating all of this, sent me to an endocrinologist, abundant tests and, weeks and weeks later. And this endocrinologist says, yes, you have thyroid cancer. But guess what? Of all the cancers, this is the one that takes the longest to kill you. So you should be fine.
Oh my God. Is that exactly how he said it? Oh,
That is
she.
exactly how she said it. Yeah. So here am I, I'm hearing cancer, but don't worry about it, you'll be fine. I'm like, those two things don't go together.
No,
Something's not
they
right.
don't. So at that point, was the cancer stage 4?
No, so at that point, it didn't even have a label because it was like, hey, it's not going to kill you. So I went back to my GP and I said, look, all the things that you've investigated so far, my adrenals are kaput. He diagnosed me with Cushing's syndrome. And I said, this endo that you sent me to says it's nothing to worry about. And he said, well, cancer is cancer. Doesn't matter where it is.
Right.
It doesn't follow a rule book. It doesn't follow a playbook. I'm not sure why she said it's going to take forever to kill you. It's still going to kill you. Like, we have to do something.
Yeah.
So that's when we started, looking more into it. We changed endocrinologists, and I ended up having meetings with a surgeon. And, the surgeon did a few biopsies, which I wasn't happy about, because if anyone's had biopsies, they're not pleasant. And there's a lot of theories that biopsies spread the cancer. They pierce the encapsulated cancer and spread the cells. So I really wasn't happy. But what came from this investigation was that it wasn't just in my thyroid, it was in my lymph nodes. So that's when the surgeon explained, once it hits your lymphatic system, it's now considered stage 4. It's on the move. It's not just a thyroid cancer.
Right.
It's something you have to do something about. And so she basically said, listen, clear your calendar, because you're category 1, priority 1. I want you on that table as soon as possible, because it's on the move. And that was kind of scary, because at this point I was a single parent of 2 young boys, or 2 young teen boys, and going through a terrible divorce at the same time.
Oh.
And, it was just like, what else is going to happen?
And what year was this?
So this was now 2015. Okay. So it had all kind of accelerated from my first, I can't swallow, what's wrong with me? Why is my weight coming back? To category 1, priority 1, get on that surgery table. It was about 6 months of acceleration of the process. So I really didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And I mentioned I was going through a divorce. Well, unfortunately, the lawyers on both sides, you have to be open and free with information to your lawyer. So I said, hey, I've just been diagnosed with cancer. And so in order for me to keep my children, I was basically forced to have the surgery, which I didn't want. I actually wanted to look at more natural ways of treating it. But my lawyer said, well, if you don't have the surgery, now that you have a cancer diagnosis, particularly now at stage 4, the courts could say that you're being irresponsible and, not a good adult role model for the kids, because you're not taking your cancer seriously. So there was no way then for me to look at more natural means other than surgery. I was backed into a corner. So
were you having a custody battle, it sounds like?
Yeah, custody, settlement, the whole shebang.
Oh, goodness.
So, here I was forced to have the surgery, and, things happen for a reason. So originally they said the cancer was on the right side of my thyroid. But when I went into surgery, apparently it was right across the whole back of the thyroid. And in the process of trying to remove what they could, they destroyed 2 parathyroid organs and had to move 2. So, and they removed a whole chunk of lymph nodes. So now I have this lovely lymphedema that I'm left with. So yeah, when I came to, my neck was in a cage. I was on a ward with 3 other people, and the surgeon comes along and says, was going to remove half your thyroid, but had to take the whole thing and a whole bunch of lymph nodes. You should be fine now. Yay, happy days.
Yay, congrats. Oh, geez.
I know, right? Didn't tell me anything about lymphedema, what removing those lymph nodes was going to do, what removing the whole thyroid was going to do,
right?
What destroying my parathyroids was going to do. It was kind of none of that till about a week later. And it was like, oh, now you have to watch your calcium levels, because your parathyroids are in charge of that. And you're going to have weight issues probably for the rest of your life, because, your thyroid has a big part to do with that. And your lymph nodes, well, sorry, but now you're going to get lymphedema. And we also stuffed your neck up a bit. So there was a lot going on. But, at the end of the day, that was 2015. We're now in 2022 and I'm alive. So, we can look back and go, I wish I hadn't done this, or I wish I hadn't done that in my life. But you've got to look at the result. And, I'm 7 years on. I don't bury my head in the sand. I check my cancer markers every year and I'm like, I'm on top of this. I've done the natural treatments post-surgery. So I didn't have chemo and I didn't have radiation because all of my Googling led to that's not a good idea for me. I'm not saying it's not a good idea for everyone, but for me, that wasn't a good idea.
Did they
And so I've
recommend
treated,
that? Was it recommended? I'm just curious because
they did
radiation,
recommend it very strenuously.
both?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because radiation is used a lot with thyroid.
Yeah. And I spoke to a radiation specialist, someone that actually does it on people, not two people, on people. And he said, where it is, you run a very high risk of your jaw being disintegrated or your collarbone. And I went, I don't like the word risk, jaw, collarbone altogether. So that's not for me. So, yeah, I threw myself into natural therapies to make sure it didn't come back. I do check my markers. Like I said, not generalized advice for anyone, but you've got to do what's right for you. And for me, taking the more natural route, healing the things that had caused the cancer, looking for the root cause of, okay, this is why this happened, and then treating those was the pathway that I took. And that's led me to where I am today.
So I want to ask, because it was an issue with your, at that time, soon to be ex-husband, when you decided, like you said, okay, I did the surgery, had to do it. But when you decided not to do the recommended, let's say, sort of Western standard of care, right? Did that become an issue, or was the divorce settled at that point?
No, the divorce was still going on. So for me to give in and have the surgery, I cut a deal. And so I said, all right, but if I have the surgery, I don't have to do the other Western medical treatments afterwards.
Good for
So
you for
I will
cutting
do
that
the surgery.
deal.
Yeah, I will give in on this point, even though I really do not want it. But after that, I do it my way. And so, there was a bit of brokering the deal going on. And yeah, so that was my give and take.
Was your ex-husband sympathetic at all?
No, no, actually, while I was in surgery, literally in surgery, that's when the divorce went through. And I actually didn't even know that was all going on. I knew it was coming up, but I didn't know that would be the day. So I wasn't even in court. So the divorce was granted. Look, I wanted a divorce too, but the divorce was granted. And then the huge, long settlement process of the next 3 years started.
Oh,
So
Lord.
I know I could at least go into that settlement going, yeah, I did the surgery. You all wanted me to do it. I did it. And now I'm dealing with the rest of it. Unfortunately, my attention was more on my health than the settlement. Not unfortunately, because your health is everything.
Yes.
But I lost out big time in the settlement because I was focused on I need to be alive for my kids.
Yeah.
So I fought for my kids and I fought for my health, and I lost all the assets. So, when you look at the scale of life, there's a balance, and getting my health was the most important thing next to having my kids.
Oh, I agree. Because if you don't have your health, you can't do anything else. You can't do all these other things. How long were you married, out of curiosity?
14 years.
14 years. Wow. So your kids were preteens or teens, right? Young.
Yep.
What was their reaction? Because that couldn't have been easy. The divorce was already going on and all this stuff, but then they find out their mother has cancer.
Yeah, look, the whole time I was in bed with the chronic fatigue, they were brilliant. They would bring their homework in and lie on my bed and, do it at my feet. And so they were really, really good. And they're good kids, they're good boys. But when I got the diagnosis and the surgeon told me, category 1, priority 1, you're stage 4, like we can't deal with this. You've basically got a year to live if you don't do anything. And even once you've done the surgery, because you're saying no to chemo and radiation, we're still going to give you a year because you're not doing it the way we know to do it.
Right.
So I had to have that conversation with my kids, and I had to say, listen, mummy might not be here next year. And they just lost a father. So I'm it, and so looking at their faces was really probably the hardest thing. And that is what forced me to go, I need to look deeper. I need to find out, why did this happen? Not run around and go, okay, this happened. Now what do I do? But why did this happen? Because if that why isn't fixed, it could happen again. And I never want to see their faces, with tears rolling down their faces again. Not like this. I can't leave them. So having that
prior
really,
to this, I want to ask, prior to this, were you involved in health and natural health? Like, was that part of your life?
I had dabbled. So I had actually owned a gym, a special populations gym, and I had done my clinical nutrition advanced diploma. So I knew a whole lot of mainstream health and fitness, but I didn't know, I guess, what I know now, the holistic approach. So this is why those flags had come up. Why was my weight coming back? Why was I exhausted? I was doing all the right things. And, so here I was in this situation. But yeah, really looking at the root cause was something that was new to me. And
how did you go about doing that? I find that so interesting.
yeah, I had to learn about all the body systems, like crash course, which system does what and why, and which other system does it talk to. And I really did have to throw myself in the deep end. So, of course, I started with the thyroid because it was a thyroid cancer. And so I started studying the work of Isabella Wentz, the thyroid pharmacist. And then I started looking at Don Tolman's work with the doctrine of signatures. And, I was already introducing, so I was kind of in that world. So I looked at all of that. And then I came across Dr. Perry Nicholson because I developed lymphedema, and he's a lymphatic specialist. And, I looked at Anthony William, the medical medium. I looked at all of his stuff and threw myself into all of that and went, okay, some of this is good, some of it's out there. I'll just take what I need. And, I was looking at T. Colin Campbell, who developed several courses and wrote the book Whole, about the whole body. And then I met Dr. Stuart Gillespie, who's my current mentor, and he taught me about how to look at all the systems of the body working together and how to find a root cause. So, there was a lot going on, a lot of study behind the scenes. And, I'm so blessed that I could find these mentors to work with and study under and study the work of. And it's not any one particular modality, it was years of research. So here I am today, 7 years on. I treat my whole body. I've still got some issues. My weight never dropped back off again. And, I've got the lymphedema, and I've got some damage from the surgery in my neck, and I get on every day and work through it and address the root cause. And now I get to help other people do that too.
So for you, what was the root cause?
There was a number of root causes for me. Okay. So the first thing was my loss of sense of self. This sounds a little bit woo-woo, but when we're disconnected from ourself, be it through a trauma or be it through what we're saying to ourselves every day, like example, someone would come up to me, so Magic, who are you? And I'd go, well, I was a wife, and now I'm a mom, and I'm a business owner, and I'm a friend, and I'm a daughter. Okay, but who are you? I go,
yeah, those are all in relationship to other
yeah,
people.
I didn't know who I was. So that was a big thing. And it was what I was saying to myself, I'm fat, I'm overweight, or I'm dumb, I can't get this, or, things like that. And we all say things like that to ourselves. That creates trauma. And so what happens when you have trauma is your nervous system responds and it goes, wow, something's dangerous here. And it's a thought, but the nervous system doesn't know it's a thought. It's something dangerous. So it responds. So we get things like nerve pain, or we get the chronic fatigue, or, we get gut dysbiosis because the motility is not there, or, we get migraines, or there's a lot going on that the nervous system can do because there's a trauma. And then what happens is our endocrine system responds. So my endocrine system had already had its own trauma with the surgery, with the cancer, the lymph nodes, like that's all part of it. And so the endocrine system responds. So you can get, hot flashes when you get stressed, or you get dizziness or nausea, or, whatever. It's trying to keep you safe because that's the body's job.
Right.
And then when all these things have happened, the immune system responds. My immune system was like, no, I'm out. Tap out, not doing this, because I'm going to shut you down to keep you safe. But this is the PNEI system of trauma. And trauma was a lot of my root cause. It was childhood trauma. It was marital trauma. It was medical trauma. And then it was surgical trauma. And it was the divorce trauma. And it was moving my kids to a whole new city trauma. All of this was going on. So that was a big part of my root cause. Some of the other part of my root cause was toxicity. When my kids were little, I thought it was brilliant that I could keep my house spotlessly clean and disinfected within an inch of its life, literally.
Really?
There was
with two boys? Really?
2 boys, I know, right? I dropped something and I'd be there with the we have Glen 20 here, which is a disinfectant. Glen 20 on the floor.
Like Monica from Friends. Like if the slightest thing dropped on the floor, she was
I would literally follow them around with the dustbuster.
No.
But I didn't know that wasn't healthy. I thought it was, but I didn't know back then that it wasn't healthy. These kids need to get dirty and get microbes and go outside and, put their hand in the dirt and put it to their face and, drop something off the floor and eat it again. Like that's what you're supposed to do as a child to build up your resilience for your immune system. But our house, no, it was spotless the whole time. So, there was that. There was toxicity because I was using chemical cleaners, chemical disinfectants, bleach in the toilet. Like I didn't know back then what I was doing. I was buying packaged foods because 2 kids, 2 years apart, and a husband that was doing shift work back then. You've got to have something convenient, don't you?
Right.
You've got to feed your family, right?
Yeah.
So there was toxicity was a big part of my root cause. And, there was a lot more to that. Pre-kids was a very heavy drinker. In fact, I was an alcoholic. And, I only stopped because I got pregnant. But I was also anorexic. So I was an alcoholic, anorexic before I got pregnant.
So that sobered you up, getting pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one way to go cold turkey.
Yeah. So and that is a combination, by the way, you don't hear very often.
I know, right? So I hadn't really treated my body with nutrients. Right. So that was the other thing missing. So I've got high toxicity, high trauma, low nutrients, and low lack of understanding of what I was doing to myself. So when I'm looking at root cause, there's a whole bundle in there that are just a perfect storm for what was going to happen later.
So what do you think about Chinese medicine where they believe emotions reside in certain organs, or even the chakra system? So when I think back to root cause with my thyroid, yes, thyroid disease runs in my family. It's very genetic. It's more common in women than men. But, if you put your hand on your throat, if you're listening and not watching, that's where your thyroid is. And in yoga, in the meditative part of yoga, that would indicate that you're not speaking your voice. You're not speaking your truth, right? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's got a big part to play in it. And I looked at that as well. So I learned about the chakras and about meridians and all
Yeah.
of those things. And yes, what had I done for my whole marriage? I didn't speak up.
Mm.
Nobody knew how bad things were at the house. I would put on this, I guess we call it an Instagram life now, but it wasn't back then. And I would have parties, Christmas parties and things like that, and everything's great. No, yeah. But my closest friends would say, not once during this party did you look at your husband, smile at him, or stand by his side.
Oh, so they noticed.
They noticed,
They
right? But no
noticed.
one ever spoke up because I didn't speak up. So there was a lot going on that I didn't speak up about. And, I look back now at the time that I was married and I entered it being a loudmouth, self assured woman who knew what she wanted in life. In fact, I only got married because my biological clock was ticking. And somehow in my head, I'd convinced myself you can't have a baby out of wedlock. Really dumb idea in hindsight. But
So
anyway,
how old were you when you got married?
yeah, I was 27.
Okay, you were still pretty young.
26 and then
Yeah, you
baby
were
at
young.
27, baby at 29. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
But the clock was tick, tick, ticking. Anyway, yeah, so I had entered the marriage pretty much being a person that would do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. You know,
So I got
travel,
I got to ask,
race
what
cars,
happened?
whatever. And then I became a doormat. So,
What happened?
I don't know. I really don't know. I lost who I was. That's what happened. So I became the wife, the mum, and nothing else. And that was like the robotic mission that I was on. And I didn't speak up about what was happening in the home. And when I did, I told my mother, who basically told me, well, this is what you decided. So deal with it, you know, have at it.
Suck it up is what your
Suck it
mother
up,
said.
princess. Yeah. And yeah. And I, again, with her, never said, hey, this is how I feel about our relationship. So from all these toxic relationships, I was just taking the punches and sometimes literally just taking the punches, but never speaking up. Even when I had my gym, I would go to work and my staff would go, what's the mark on your neck? And I'd go, it's nothing, nothing's going on. Everything's fine. I'm your boss. Keep your mouth shut. So there was a lot going on. My kids would ask me, what was that noise last night? And I go, oh, it's nothing. It's probably a possum or something. Don't worry about it.
So your
They didn't need to
ex-husband
know it was
was
me,
abusive?
yeah, getting slammed against the wall or. So again,
Oh,
I didn't speak up and I lost who I was the main thing. Because not only did I not speak up to anyone else, I didn't speak up to myself. So when I had those thoughts of, you need to leave, you need to get out of here, I'd go, no, shut up. There's a roof over our heads, there's money in the bank, kids are at school, everything's fine. Like, everything's fine. You don't matter anymore. And so that, going to your point of Chinese medicine, yes, I didn't speak up, but I didn't speak up to myself either.
right.
And I knew it wasn't right, but I suppressed my voice. Did the thyroid cancer, evolve from me suppressing myself? Quite possibly. But I also had liver toxicity, which, I'm still battling now. And was that just from all the chemicals I was using in my home? Probably not. I was angry and I was fearful and I was ashamed. And if you look in Chinese medicine at all of the emotions stored in the liver,
Yeah,
you've got
liver's anger.
anger, yeah, anger, envy, fear, shame. Well, I had all of that. I would look at my friends and their marriages and I would go, oh wow, look at them. I'm so envious. So not only was my throat chakra closed off, all right, but I had lack of self-belief, lack of self-love, and a lot of liver stuff. So my solar plexus was shut as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And yes, Chinese medicine, you know, time eternal information, I think it's something we can't not look at.
Well, I asked about that because I think you know a little of my story. That's what my sister believed. She believed that her liver cancer came out of her intense anger to our mother for abandoning her and to her father. We had different fathers for dying before she was even born. And she had not dealt with or really resolved any of that anger. And I know for myself, I have had my gallbladder removed, and I know the gallbladder's specifically resentment. And I know why I was resentful. You know, I know why. I won't go into it, but I know why and how that happened. And then also, since my sister died, um, it's gotten so much better now because I've healed a lot now. But there was a solid 10 years where I had bronchitis and pneumonia constantly, and grief and sadness lives in our lungs, according to Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
And so I find it really fascinating. And I will add one more thing because I just so feel you about looking at other people's marriages. But if there is one thing I realize now, you don't have a clue what's going on inside of a marriage. Like even before
Totally.
Instagram, right? Yeah, it's just so strange. And I think it has gotten worse with Instagram culture and with portraying this perfection all the time. Tell me now, what was your worst moment in all of it?
I would have to say the worst moment was telling my kids mummy might not be here next year. That was the hardest thing because I was trying to get my head around it.
Right.
But to tell two kids that had been, uprooted from their life, they'd had years of trauma in the family home and now being moved to a different city, and, they weren't happy about the divorce either because of the proceedings. My eldest actually even emailed my ex's lawyer and said, hey, tell him to stop this because, I'm 14 and I have ideas of my own.
Oh my God,
And
bless him.
then I copped the blame for that.
Well, of
Because
course you
he
did.
was like, tell my father to get out of it, like put your head in. So, they'd been dealing with all of this. And then for me to say, you know what, the one person that's always been there for you, the one person that loves you no matter what, might die. That, I guess, was the rock bottom moment.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your best moment?
The best moment. Wow. I would have to say coming home from the hospital,
Yeah.
because the moment I walked into my house and my kids, ran to me and the dogs ran to me and the cats just glared at me from the benches because, the
As
cat.
cats will do.
It's like, oh, the feeder person's back. Great. The slave, she's back.
Well, you know what they say, dogs have owners, cats have staff.
Yes, exactly. So the staff was back.
Yeah.
But that was the best moment, walking back in, because that's when I
Oh,
went, okay, I've hit rock bottom. Now I have to bring myself up,
yep.
because now I have all of these little faces looking at me and I can't ever abandon them again. So, it sounds like it probably wouldn't be the best moment for a lot of people, but for me it was. I'm very much, give me a mission and I will get there. Give me a goal and I will reach it. And so for me, looking at everyone's faces, I was like, this isn't about me. This is about them. So because I still had no sense of self at this point, that was enough to get me going. And in the process of that, I found myself. So I wasn't just, the slave to the cats, and I wasn't just the owner to the dogs and the mum to the kids. I was a person and I had thoughts and feelings of my own. And so from that moment, I had to say to the kids, I've always put you guys number one in my life. Now you're number two, because I'm number one, because I can't be who you want me to be unless I am who I am. So I say that
That
would be
is
the best moment.
amazing that you actually said that. That
Yeah.
is, it's incredible.
Yeah.
What's one thing you wish you had known at the beginning when you received that finally definitive diagnosis?
Wish I'd known I had options that I
Mm,
didn't know because I was so entrenched in the medical system back then. You know, I'm not putting it down. If that's where you want to go, then that's where you want to go. But I wish I knew I had options. And I just didn't feel like I did. You know, I'd had medical gaslighting for years, being told nothing was wrong, take it to a pinnacle of the diagnosis. And, you know, I just didn't know enough. Now, you know, I'm fully self empowered and I know what's going on. But yeah, I guess that is one thing that was an issue.
yeah. I hear a lot of people say that because and often they're just rushed right
Yeah.
into something. So,
Yeah.
so if you could only do one thing to improve healthcare in Australia, where you live, what would it be and why?
Would be getting everyone to look at root cause, would be looking at your full history. You know, here the doctors have 15 minutes to talk to you, and you don't see the same doctor every time. You might see, you know, a registrar or someone that's just come into the country, or you might see someone that's about to retire. Like it, you know, you don't have that continuum of care anymore. So, you know, it's knowing your own full medical history and jotting down every symptom and putting it all on a timeline so that when you find a practitioner like me or like my colleagues, that's what we're going to look at.
Yeah.
We're going to look at what happened first, not the symptom that you're dealing with now, because we don't chase symptoms, but where did it come from? And you are the holder of your information. I would love to see people around the world, not just in Australia, understand or rather comprehend that their medical information, their symptomology, their timeline of health events is their information and it's their responsibility. So that if you do see another practitioner or you do see another doctor, you're not starting from square one all over again because
Yeah.
every time you have to retell the whole story,
I know.
you're
God.
traumatizing yourself. So,
Yeah.
what we've created, unfortunately, to this age is not a wellness system, but an illness system.
Yeah. I agree.
So it's, you know, consumerism, it's reductionism. So it's treating things in isolation now. And it's let's make you buy these pills or let's make you buy this health insurance or, you know, whatever it is. It's all about the dollar spend and it's all about treating one thing at a time, not looking at the whole body and going, how did this happen? Why is this happening? And what does that correlate to that? Like, you know, we have to look at the big picture. We've just become so used to practitioners, medical people, whoever, just going, oh, so you've got a sore throat. Let's treat the sore throat. What a shame that throat's sore. Take this, buy that, do this. Not why is the throat sore? What
Hmm.
pathogen is there? What has triggered that pathogen? What dysbiosis has caused this pathogen to overflourish? You know, we're not looking at the root cause of things anymore. We've allowed that to happen as a population, and we need to take our power back now and say, no, it's not my symptom, and it's not about popping a pill. It's about what is happening underneath, and you need to care because guess what? They won't care until you tell them that they need to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You just have to stand up for yourself constantly. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. You
Be your
do.
own advocate.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Magic. Are you ready for the Thriver Rapid Fire?
Let's do it.
Okay. Beach, desert, or mountains?
Mountains,
Beach Boys, Beatles, or Rolling Stones?
Beatles,
What is one word that best describes you?
agitating.
What?
I agitate people. I make them think or I annoy them into making a move. That's who I am.
Oh my God. Before you die, what is the last song you want to hear?
Center of the Sun by Conjure One.
And the last meal you want to eat?
Chicken Kiev. Is that terrible? With peas?
No, are you kidding me? I would eat everything that's bad for me that I can't eat now,
Yeah.
and have a bottle of wine with it too. So yeah. The last person or people you want to see?
My boys.
And how old are they now?
They are now 23 and almost 21.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And the last words you will speak?
I told you so.
Okay, that might be one of my favorite responses of all time.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. You just listened, just listen. Aside from Cancer U, what's the blood resource you would recommend for cancer patients and caregivers? And please tell people how they can get in touch with you.
The one resource would be my mentor's website, which is innateimmunity.com. And people can get hold of me at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's holistic with a W.
All right. We will make sure to put that in the show notes and the workshop notes. Magic, thank you so much for coming back on and making this happen. I know we've had so many technical difficulties, but I think people are really going to get so much out of hearing your story.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.